Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I know you're going to love today's episode with Rebecca Greentree. Rebecca is doing some amazing work, so I'm excited to have her on to share a story with you guys. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drkaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Rebecca Greentree. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Rebecca Greentree. And Rebecca is a vegan blogger and YouTuber who is passionate about sharing her vegan travel, her amazing food around the globe, cruelty-free fashion, and easy ways to live a more compassionate life. And I'm just excited to have Rebecca on to share her story and everything that she's working on. So Rebecca, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I'm excited to have you.
Hi, Casey. Thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. What a bold intro.
No, I'm excited to hear your story. So, before we jump into everything that you're working on right now, why don't you walk us through your backstory? First off, where you're from and, what your health and wellness looked like for you just growing up as a kid.
Cool. So I'm actually originally from Kelowna, BC, and I've been in Vancouver for about 7 years now. And my story is sort of like a bit all over the map. I think it's been quite an evolution to get where I am now. But I think as a child, I thought I was a vegetarian, but we weren't quite. Our neighbors were vegetarian, and my sister and I had like an interest in it. We'd eat like scrambled tofu eggs at their house, and thought that was like so cool and weird. And so when I was in like kindergarten, my parents sort of like wanted to eat more vegetarian. So I'd say like we were predominantly vegetarian, but we did eat poultry like here and there, maybe like once or twice a week. And then for a number of years, I think people would ask me, why are you vegetarian? But why do you eat chicken? And I think I was like so young and didn't quite understand the fact that like, oh, well, chicken's also an animal and that doesn't really fit the bill. So as like a preteen, I sort of started getting like quite interested in where our food comes from and what happens to the animals before they sort of reach the supermarket. So I remember like, I don't quite know how I found it, but stumbling upon PETA and like signing up to their mailing list, which was like pretty...
I'm sure it was eye-opening.
Totally. And like, as like, basically a kid, the things that you receive in the mail from PETA are a little... I don't know how to put it. I mean, they're very in your face, right?
Was it worse then? Because I'm thinking like, just because of regulations and things like, I don't know, was it less restricted probably than it is now, or is it about the same? As far as
it's probably about the same. Okay. I think I'm also like, I'm so in this world that I'm aware of what happens and what that looks like. So I think, I don't want to say that I'm desensitized to it, but I,
you do though.
You kind of, I know what happens. But I think back then it was like, oh my gosh, it was really upsetting. So by the time I turned my 15th birthday, I went like full vegetarian, but I was also, so while I was eating like dairy and eggs on occasion, my lifestyle choices, I'd chosen to omit leather and avoid wool and obviously fur and down, and look at sort of like cruelty-free beauty and products. So that was also sort of strange. Like I wasn't really a vegan, I was a vegetarian, but the lifestyle piece was there. Mm-hmm. And then in my 20s, I sort of like dabbled, went back and forth with being vegan to vegetarian, and then also like playing with eating a little bit of seafood, and then totally being put off once I learned more about that. So I've been like fully 100% vegan for about coming up on 2 years now. And yeah, I mean, there's no way I'll ever go back. We'll say that much.
For sure. I was working out with two of my friends this morning, and they're not vegan, and we were I don't know, we were making like a bet with like, 'cause we were doing burpees, and I was like, yeah, if I do it, you guys have to go vegan for 30 days. And we were just talking, it kind of sparked the conversation, and they're like, would you ever go back? And I'm like, no, there's absolutely no way. Because once you like dig deeper into it's so much more than just physically, like it's, there's actual animals being harmed and like the environment. And it's like, you really can't come back from that once you dig deeper into it.
100%. I think I mean, obviously initially for me, I went vegetarian and vegan for, animal welfare reasons. But I mean, as we look now, there's so much more information around the environmental impacts, of that as well. And I think that those are, and health, obviously health is huge, that there's just, I just couldn't go back. And I also will say this is like totally unhealth related, but from like a sort of like, this is going to sound super hippy dippy, but from like a spiritual perspective, I just feel like putting animals who've been, essentially murdered, who've been killed for my own gluttony, really, because we know that we can survive without it. It just seems irrational. And I feel like on a vibrational level, I want to be living a compassionate life and doing things that, avoid harm to others as best as possible in sort of like all areas of life.
Absolutely. And no, like you were saying, like it's definitely not hippie at all, because it's true. It's like, there's obviously no really humane way to like kill an animal, and you have to imagine the amount of stress, or if like they've been taken away, like the baby animals have taken away from their parents, there's stress on both ends there. And just think about like a human body, right? Like when we're stressed, there's reactions in our body with, hormones, like there's things happening that aren't good, obviously. And that's the same thing is happening in an animal. So when you consume that, you're taking on that stress state, and it literally becomes like who you are, and like affects your thought process and like your anxiety. And it's pretty crazy once you dig deeper into it.
100%. Yeah, I think there's just so many ways to look at it that it's like mind boggling once you really start digging.
It really is. So like once you made that decision, were your family and your friends, were they cool with it because it was kind of gradual, or did you have that support?
So I think like being a teenager and being vegetarian, that was, still a long time ago. And so I think like being vegetarian back then would be like almost sort of equivalent to being vegan now. Like it was weird. People asked a lot of questions. My family was super supportive. It was like a non-issue 100%. I think going vegan, they're understanding too. I mean, there's no issue there. I think it's more just like a level of understanding. People still don't quite know the whole grasp, I guess, like, oh, well, you can eat this, can't you? Oh, well, no, well, there's butter in that. And, butter's not vegan. So right. I think it's sort of like the new learning curve for them, right? Like they fully understand what a vegetarian is. And I think vegan, now they're better. It's been a couple of years, but like initially it was like, okay, Mom, I can't eat any of that.
Right. Well, whenever you decided to go from vegetarian to full vegan, like what was the struggles that you had with that transition? Because I feel like that's a lot of people probably live in that space, or people that consider going vegan will be like, okay, well, maybe I'll just try vegetarian for a bit. So what are the struggles maybe that you had, or was it pretty easy? Just so like they know what to expect if they want to take that next step from vegetarian to vegan, because like, obviously it seems like an easy step. You just have to be kind of aware of like, dairy is in such random things. I think that's in eggs too. Mm-hmm. It's hard sometimes. I mean, you have to be a little bit more cautious, right? Like whenever you're first making that transition.
Yeah, I am. I think for me, I didn't eat so I'll say like I didn't eat a ton of dairy. Like I wasn't eating dairy all the time. It was more like maybe like milk at a coffee shop. If they didn't have non-dairy, I'd have it. And like the odd time I'd buy cheese. And cheese was for me like, I could never go vegan because I could never give up the cheese. And like, you hear people say that too. Like, how do you not eat cheese? But like, there's so many reasons to not eat cheese. Like there's literally like full books written dedicated to like why we should not eat cheese because it's so bad for you.
Right.
And honestly, that was probably the hardest thing for me, was giving that up, even though it was only like an occasion sort of dietary, piece in my diet. But I will say that cheese is actually like is super addicting. And once I stopped eating it for about a month, like I do not miss it at all. I do not crave it. So that was like my number one. I'm not a huge egg fan, so I didn't like miss that. And I also love tofu scramble. Yeah. But I will see eating out initially, and it's getting better. I live in Vancouver, which is like such a forward thinking sort of like great place to be for wellness and health. And there's so many restaurants that are, either vegetarian and vegan or 100% vegan, or like, meat restaurants that have a separate vegan menu. Like we're totally spoiled. But in traveling, I think that's sort of where I like really, really learned to like read labels and sort of like Google everything, like what to look out for, because there are so many foods that we think are vegan have, it seems odd that there's, milk or egg in it, but I think that's just like a history of production of food. And I think
it's filler.
Yeah, it's just a filler. And so those are like things that I look out for. I also would say like it's easy to be a crummy vegetarian or a crummy like vegan, like I want to say like a bad eating, I guess.
Right.
Like processed foods. And I'm not like, I don't never eat processed foods. Obviously I'm not perfect. I'm human. I love a packaged food every once in a while, but I think that's for sure where you really, really have to look out for things. And it pays to get used to making food at home from a health perspective, regardless, but also in being vegan. It's really people who say like, oh, I don't like to cook, but like it's easy. And honestly, you can make really simple, really affordable foods that are vegan, and like make a big batch and then you have lunch for like the week or whatever it is. So,
and it's, like you said, it's cheaper. It's like, people, that's like one of the kind of obstacles people create when they're like, oh, I could never eat like that because it's too expensive, but it's really not. It just gets expensive when you're doing all of the processed foods all of the time.
Mm-hmm. When you're buying all and I like that too. It's cool because it is like a growing industry. So we are seeing all these like crazy new organic vegan products popping up in the Whole Foods markets. But if you are making things from scratch, like you can easily make the things that you see in the grocery store at home. Mm-hmm. It's so much more cost effective. So I think just like finding balance, when you're a new vegan too, it's totally easy to be like, oh, I need to buy like, vegan cream cheese and vegan this. And it's like, well, you don't really need all those things, You
have the money to spare, you go for it. It is delicious. It's great.
Totally.
Yeah, but it's like, even like, I don't want to hate on Chipotle because I love Chipotle, but like, even if you're getting a veggie bowl and you load it with rice and the guac and everything else, you're going to pay like $8 for that one. For $8, you can make a week's worth of that same bowl. And you know what I mean? It's just thinking like that as well.
Absolutely. Rice and beans and beans are so affordable when you're buying them in bulk. And yeah, totally.
Whenever you made that switch from just a fully vegan, did you notice any differences with just your body in general, how you were feeling? I know you mentioned spirit. I mean, just in any way, like, did you feel any different or did it feel the same?
I think, I know, I actually, people do ask me that and I didn't really like track it, I guess. Mm-hmm. I would say, I think I'd sort of like weaned off of eating dairy, so I wasn't eating a lot. So the switch wasn't like pivotal for me from a health perspective. But I would say like I felt leaner, lighter. And this is like vegetarian, but especially vegan. I love how like, sounds so bad, but I love how you can eat so much.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, you can eat so much more food than you could if you were eating a meat-based diet. And it's, you're eating plants, so you can just keep snacking on veggies and hummus and, delicious things all day.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's like sort of a funny, like it's an interesting switch to go from like, eating lean, I imagine, eating sort of like your meat protein and your veggies in like 3 meals a day comparatively to like eating so much more in terms of volume and sort of like maintaining your same weight and your same like muscle mass.
Right. Because I think with our society, we're so programmed to think if we want to lose weight, you have to deprive. It's going to be a diet. It's going to be hard. You're going to be cutting out a bunch of things. But you're right. Like with this type of eating, you can eat so much. And because it is plants, your body knows how to process it. So it takes less energy. It's going to give you more energy. And your body just knows how to take that in and stabilize your weight at the same time. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely. It's cool to see. It's just a very different, it's not a diet. It is a lifestyle, and it allows you, initially it seems like you're really cutting things out, but in a vegan diet, there is a multitude of foods that you can eat, that don't lack in flavor or limit you in feeling full, I guess.
Yep. And what I love about just people that do embrace like the vegan lifestyle is because it really affects every other part of your life as well. I know you're talking about it affects the way that you shop for certain products. It affects the things that you do day to day. And, how has it affected just the trajectory of, I guess, your life overall, but also obviously your career choice as well, and what you do with exerting your energy with your YouTube channel, your blogging. So I guess, how has it affected just choices you made career-wise, just making that decision?
I don't know that it's even career-wise. I think it's, I started, so I actually started the blog because I wanted a passion project outside of my work. And I work with my fiance, and I just felt like I really needed something for me. And even being a vegetarian, people would always ask me, what do you eat? And what's your diet? And where do you shop? And just sort of these basic questions that seemed so obvious to me, obviously, because I'd been doing it for so long. And now even more so with eating vegan, that I was like, this would be like a great place for me to like be creative, and also share things that I think would be of value to these people who keep, friends and extended friends of friends who are asking me questions about my diet and my lifestyle. But it also has me almost like triggered a thought process in a larger scheme around just consumption in general, and really doing diligence in the products that we're buying and consuming. So, if you think about, first it comes your food, and you want to know where it comes from and what's in it. And then you look at your clothes, and obviously, initially you're trying to like omit all of these things, don't want wool, don't want fur, don't want whatever it might be. But then it's like looking at things like what about the fashion industry? Should I be avoiding fast fashion? Should I be trying to buy used clothing? And then the same goes with like makeup. Obviously we want to buy cruelty-free, want to buy vegan. And I think that it is a little overwhelming as a consumer, but we do have so much power in making impactful choices in our everyday life when we're consuming things, because our dollars basically pay into various industries. And it's made me super aware of that on like not just a food level, on a very massive level. And that's something I'm like working towards. I'm new to this all, that like I'm trying to be more sustainable. I wouldn't say I'm like a minimalist by any means, but like thinking and
the awareness
about the thing. Yeah. Like being really aware about what we own and what we need. And, and I go through phases obviously where I'm better,
right.
But that's really shifted. So I love it. I love sharing, my findings with other people, because I think that they are just like, they're questions that come up for a lot of people over and over again. And I feel like I love helping people. Like I consider myself a helper. Like I love, helping people to find an answer, I guess. People are like, oh, I really want to go vegan, but I'm stuck on this. Or I am vegan, but I really miss my mom's meatball spaghetti, and it's like, well, let's figure out a solve together. Like, all right, well, you could try this, or it's fun for me, I guess.
Right. No, I love that. And I love how you were just mentioning just how just being aware of the products, not just food, but just everything in general. Because just being aware of the fact that everything that you purchase, and it does this no way means that you need to be perfect. Like, like you were saying, Rebecca, like, I obviously, everybody messes up all the time, and it isn't always perfect with every purchase decision, but every purchase you do make, whether it's food or a piece of clothing or anything, it really is a vote, or it's going towards, what you believe in, or it has the effect to help something you believe in. So, obviously people get, people get super crazy into politics, and obviously that has its place, but, we're making decisions day in, day out, not just on an election day. Like, what do you care about? What do you want to see more of? And I think the more that we can be just aware and just conscious of that alone, we can start to make some really positive shifts in the right direction.
I 100% agree. And I think specifically in regards to vegan, like the veganism is like the biggest, it's growing exponentially right now. Like it's, there's like a 500% increase or something in veganism in like the last 4 years, which is wild. And if you think about that in terms of how that's going to affect change, like that's a lot of people who are now, shifting themselves in the consumer market.
Exactly. Because it's almost becoming, like, I'm sure we follow a lot of the same people on Instagram. It's like, it's becoming cool to be more compassionate and to actually care about things, which is which is a very good thing.
I love it. Because, obviously I said I wasn't like fully vegetarian as a kid, but I remember being in like first grade and like kids would dangle their salami and like laugh at me, it was like, haha, you don't eat this. And now it's like, it's really cool. It's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm like an OG of this, in some respects. Like I've been thinking about this for a long time. And now it's like, all the celebrities are doing it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, see, it's just ahead of my time, like real trendsetter. but it's good, whatever it is that's going to make that shift, whether it is, Beyonce's doing it or whatever, then right. I don't really care. I think it's going to make people think about it. And I think that's a plus, for
absolutely
our health, for the environment, for the animals. Like it's a win in my book. So I don't care what makes you consider it, I guess. If you're considering it, I think it's a win.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And earlier you talked about how cruelty-free fashion did become something that you were interested in at a younger age. Was the PETA information what sparked that as well? Or what got you into that part of it as well? Because usually that's something that comes later, and that's cool that it came to you at a younger age.
Yeah, I think it was like a PETA art. I think it was specifically about leather. And I think that, the plant-based sort of like vegan movement is huge. And I do think that there's like sort of a delay on like the fashion and the lifestyle piece of it, which is fine because it is, it can be overwhelming for sure for a lot of people to like fully change over your life and your buying habits. But I mean, when we look at like fur specifically, which is obviously changing, it's not really cool to wear fur anymore. Fur is a horrific industry, and then we move down the line to leather and the impacts, not only on like the animals, but also on the planet and also the workers, the people who are working in these tanneries. You have to think about the effects of that. It's literally a skin which should decompose over time, and so in order to stop that process from happening, it needs to be treated with highly, highly toxic chemicals, which obviously there's going to be an impact of those chemicals on the environment and the workers who are, producing these textiles. So that really resonated with me early on. And I think it was probably just the information that I was fed. I think the vegan mark was missed, or maybe I just didn't get enough information in regards to sort of like egg and dairy, or didn't pay attention to it. Because
right.
it wasn't like now where like Google's like the era of Google and there's so much information. I think it was like PETA sent out like whatever it was in the mail every month. There'd be like a topic. And I remember leather and fur really being pivotal for me, and knowing that like 100% I did not want to wear or contribute to that. So
right. And then I'm sure you've seen Earthlings.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I have. Yes.
It's rough. And I've mentioned that a few times on different episodes. So if you're hearing this for like the 50th time, you still haven't watched Earthlings, go watch it. It'll be rough, but I feel like you need to see it. It's insane. It's crazy.
It is crazy. It is crazy. That it is a nice one because it touches, and everybody has their reasons too. I think, some people go vegan for the environment, some for the animal welfare, and a lot for health. But that one does sort of like touch on a lot of different things, which is nice because there are so many, animal consumption is used in a wide array of industries. It's not just the food we eat.
Definitely. And have you seen, there was a list up floating around on social media not too long ago, but just all of the companies that have gotten rid of fur, have gotten rid of leather. And there's so many companies. I mean, obviously companies in California are a little bit ahead of a lot of places, but it's cool to see like these major companies getting rid of it altogether and just going with that just compassionate living. No, I don't want to say trend because I know that it's going to stay, but it's really awesome when you see a company that is really powerful and understanding like this is the way that every company is going to have to go at some point.
I don't think I've seen that list, but I note these major fashion houses making these decisions, and I think fur was a huge one, and fur has sort of become pretty normalized. You know, we're not really seeing a lot of fur, but most notably, I did see Chanel, and I think it's exotic skins. So they're not saying no to leather, but exotic specifically, which is like there's a lot of exotic skins. The cruelty in that industry is
right.
Ooh, I mean, it's all cruel, but yeah, it's very bad. So that was huge because I think for these long-standing high-end, fashion companies, it's been such a leather and fur is equated to luxury, essentially, and a quality and a standard, and it's huge for them as brands to make that shift because it's been a part of who they are for so long. So I'm really excited to see where we go and if leather's going to be the next one to knock off the list. I think it's very cool and it's very big. It's huge.
Yeah, no, for sure. And like just by researching everything that you have within, fashion industry and going more cruelty free, like what are maybe some alternatives for people that might not know all of their options when they're looking for more compassionate products out there?
You mean like in terms of clothing and?
Whether it's a few brands that pop up or just like, for example, like I saw like you can get like pineapple leather and like things like that, like alternatives that people can kind of turn to if they don't even know where to start.
Totally. I think when you're looking at vegan leathers, I would definitely say to look for polyurethane over PVC because it is higher quality if you are going to go with like a plastic leather. Mm-hmm. And the PU doesn't require the same chemicals that PVC does, and it actually will eventually degrade over time. Obviously, a natural fiber like a plant leather is best, but that's still really new. We are seeing, it's called Pinatex, which is the pineapple leather. And there's also, I think Reebok just did a shoe with like corn, some corn sort of like fiber.
Yeah.
I just bought a pair of shoes from Nicara Shoes. They are definitely on the higher price point for a shoe. And they do plant leathers. They don't say specifically like what plant is made, which shoe is made of which plant. But I honestly could not believe how soft these shoes are. They're like a ballet flat. And it almost feels like a soft lamb leather, which is like disgusting to say, but like it's, when you think of like vegan leathers, oftentimes like they're quite sort of like tough and they don't like stretch over time. But it's a whole new world we're about to dive into. And it's incredible. I would also say like when in terms of clothing, just avoiding when it comes to like outerwear, looking for cotton over wool, and avoiding like Angora. I just ordered a Vote coat, Vote New York City, I think is their name. And they are such thick, warm winter jackets, which, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I can't give up down because like I live in wherever, I live somewhere where it gets really, really cold. And these jackets are like crazy warm, like they're meant for minus, -0 and below. So I think like there are alternatives 100%. Like it's just knowing what to look for. So avoid your fur, obviously avoid down, look for wool, look for Angora, try to go with a plant leather if you can, if not polyurethane over PVC. I love Angela Roy bags. They're amazing. Matinette's pretty good. Yeah. I don't know. There's lots. There's so many new brands coming up too.
No, that's super helpful though. And I saw like, I'm pretty sure it was North Face, but I think they're coming out with a vegan jacket, which is pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And even like, I don't know if it's just like a one-time thing or if they're doing a line of them, but it was like Adidas was doing a line of shoes that was made from recycled plastic or recycled materials from the ocean, which is pretty amazing too. And I don't know, they might be kind of pricey, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, but it's pretty cool. You're right. The innovations that are about to come, I think, are going to be just super inventive and interesting and exciting.
The sustainability front is huge. I mean, obviously, I was going to say Girlfriend Collective. They have like athletic wear, which obviously most athletic wear is vegan regardless, but their stuff is also made out of recycled like fishing nets, I think. And like, that's so cool because this is stuff that we need to clear out of our oceans. And they're taking it and creating fibers out of it and creating clothes, which is so cool. And their price point's actually pretty reasonable.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And like kind of to touch on, you would mention sustainability. What are other ways, like if you were talking to somebody and you're going through like kind of everything with creating a more compassionate life, like what would be some starting steps that people could take? Obviously, you know, whether it's less plastic or just different like things, changes they can make even starting this week to put them on the right track towards being more sustainable, living more compassionately.
Yeah, I think and sustainability is like, that's a totally even newer thing for me. And I'm working on that. I would say like this summer, I bought like the reusable straws and started popping those in my bag. So even if I didn't remember my cup, if I was buying like an iced coffee, I'd always have my straw. And I just always have a reusable shopper in my purse. So like, I don't need to use plastic bags when I'm grocery shopping. I'm working on getting better at bringing my coffee cup. I think I should just leave one in the car. But that's, that comes with time. And, not like when you're buying produce, look at what you're buying. Do you need one of those plastic produce bags for it? Probably not. Most of the time I just, I don't use those. Those are like small changes that really add up over time. Biodegradable garbage bags are amazing. What else? I just got stasher bags. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're like a silicone reusable bag, which would sort of like you would use in lieu of like a Ziploc.
Nice.
So I love those. They're like, you can actually like cook them. You can throw them in the oven. They're dishwasher safe. You can put them in the freezer.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Those are pretty cool. And then looking at like buying used when you're shopping. So I love consignment and thrift shopping. And that's a great way to like, alleviate more clothes in the landfill and save $1, and you also find something often like really original or vintage, something no one else is going to have, which is really cool. Yeah. There are small things you can do every day. Obviously walking or riding your bike instead of driving. They definitely add up over time, and 100% sustainability if you do cut back, whether or not you want to go 100% vegan or you're going to partake in meatless Mondays, like any choice to consume a little bit less meat and dairy is going to have a big impact on the environment.
For sure. And yeah, like you were saying, it's in no way do you have to be 100% perfect. It's just about just progressing every day and just making those small changes because like, yeah, even with the sustainability side, like I'm still on the newer end of that, 100% vegan for, about 3 years, but like as far as using less plastic and stuff like that's still something I have to stay aware of. And so you mentioned the straws. I actually like, we've had this like packaged plastic straws that we've had at our house in a junk drawer for like 3 years. And we've been working on these straws. And like my daughter drinks smoothies every day. And every time I give her one of these straws, like I hate it. Like, so there's like one straw left and we got our shipment of our stainless steel straws in right before this call. So I'm excited to finally have those straws out of here. But yeah, so it's good. Like, even though like, I've even like knowing what I know with sustainability and using less plastic and straws and stuff, like that's been a slower transition for us, but just getting better and making those small changes every day. And that's really all you can do. Like we can't ask anybody to be perfect because it's obviously it's impossible, but just those small changes every day.
100%. Yeah. And I think it's like also habit, you know, like obviously eating vegan and like knowing what to cook for dinner, like that comes habitual now because you know what things you like and what to make and how to cook them. But I like, you know, when it comes to like, using those straws, it's like, oh, you totally forgot about them. And you're in a habit of whatever it was before. So it's normal for those things to take time. And I think we have to be gentle with ourselves, you know, and forgive ourselves for like not being perfect, because there are a lot of things that we can be doing. And I think just like having the intention and making the effort every day sometimes that's enough, you know?
Absolutely. And Rebecca, what have been some of your favorite resources through your journey so far?
Oh gosh,
no
that's
pressure.
like I honestly, like, it's funny because I think a lot of people like take the plunge into like a vegetarian or vegan lifestyle after like reading a book or watching a movie or a documentary. And I think there are plenty of amazing ones. I think like Earthlings is a great one. I think What the Health is an interesting one and a different perspective for people who are, more interested on the health aspect of eating plant-based. I would actually say for me, so obviously I sort of like went into vegetarianism without the need for sort of like any sort of like visceral push, I guess. But I would say that a pivotal book for me as a teenager in sort of like knowing that I wanted to stay vegetarian was actually, this is a book that I don't know if anybody else has talked about, but it's called Eternal Treblinka, Our Treatment of Animals and the Holocaust. Have you heard of it?
I haven't, but it sounds interesting though.
Yeah. So I should say as a teenager, I also like was very, and even now I am quite interested in history. And it's by Charles Patterson. And it's actually a look at how we've exploited different groups of people throughout history. So Indigenous people of color, religious groups, and how we've othered them essentially. And then takes a look at the modern day slaughterhouse. And they basically he argues the similarities between the attitudes and the methods used in these histories of oppression and cruelty. And honestly, the similarities are unmissable. And that one like really, really rung true for me on like a societal level. Like this is something that we need to change, that we're going to look back on and think, oh my gosh, how did we do that? Just like we look back on the Holocaust and say, how horrific, how did people fall prey to this? How did people, act in this atrocity? And I think we will look back on, modern day slaughterhouses in the same way. And I hope that we change that. But so that one is huge. And it's interesting because last week I actually just stumbled on a TED Talk by Melanie Joy. It's called Toward Rational, Authentic Food Choices. You heard of that? I
haven't, but I'm writing it down. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. So that was interesting because I actually just stumbled upon that last week. And she actually touches a little bit on sort of that same ideology. She talks about, how we look at people who are vegetarian or vegan and we think, whoa, they must have like such a large moral, like such a better moral compass, I guess. Mm-hmm. And she says that the majority of people, are practicing carnism, which is basically like this invisible belief system that conditions people to eat certain animals and not others, right? Like because as a vegan, I look at all animals and I think, oh God, like I would never eat a dog. I would never eat a golden retriever. And I would never eat a cow because I look at a cow and I see a personality and I see a loving, creature, I guess. So to me, they're all equal. But for most people, most meat-eating people, there is this ideology that like is conditioned and it basically disconnects people from their rationality, their feelings, and their values. Because as humans, we are innately compassionate and kind. And that's why it is so shocking to watch these documentaries and see these atrocities happening to animals, because it doesn't feel good. We're like, oh my gosh, how could that happen? But then we go to the supermarket and we are disassociated from it. It's packaged nicely and we forget that was an animal, that was a living being. And so she talks about how carnism is essentially a widespread belief. And so therefore it's seen as a given and not a choice. And people argue for carnism because people say eating meat is both natural, normal, and also necessary. And then she sort of like comparatively says, well, we've seen that a lot before in history, we've said that for a lot of things. And then she makes examples like, we used to say that it was natural, normal, and necessary to eradicate homosexuality, and today we would look at that and say, oh my God, like absolutely not. So that was really cool because I hadn't seen anybody sort of like talk about that comparison, that societal shift. And that really rings true for me. I think it's wild. I think the history of how we sort of like rationalize these and
create these like norms and thought. Like something I was thinking about the other day, and it's because I have a 2-year-old daughter. She's almost 3, but she's plant-based as well. And it's interesting because I have, now I have a lot of just different connections with people that also have kids that are plant-based. And I think questions that come up is like, well, is it fair to them that you're not giving them the choice? But it's like, even if they're eating meat, you're not giving them the choice still, right? Like,
absolutely. It is a choice. We just don't think it is. Yeah. Because it's so normalized. Yeah,
exactly. Because it's like, you're kind of forcing something on them either way.
100%,
so you can't really be like, oh, you're not giving them the opportunity to be a carnivore. It's like, well, you're not giving them the opportunity to be a vegan either. So it's an interesting topic, and I'm sure it could be debated in a lot of different ways, but it is, it's definitely an interesting point to kind of like, just think about, not with that, but just with any with any aspect of, vegan lifestyle and what's considered the norm or not.
I think vegan parents get like a bad rap, and I would agree. That's a great argument to say, I mean, who's to say that you're giving them a choice in feeding them meat? I think it's really the same. Like they're too young to make a choice. And I don't know how you'll deal with that as a parent when the time comes, but who knows, maybe you will, maybe when your daughter's of a certain age, you will explore that as a choice for her and see what decision she makes. But yeah, I think as children, you are the parent and you have to make certain decisions for them.
Right. Yeah. And no, it's definitely crazy. But just like you said though, too, I really do feel like once she is like old enough to kind of understand, I think there's going to be a major shift with just factory farming in general. Like, I think it's going to be like you were saying, like she's going to look back when she's an adult and be like, what were you guys thinking? And yeah, so that'll make me happy though, because at least we're on this side of it. But yeah, no, I think there's going to be radical changes, and obviously there's different things they're doing. Even like, I mean, have you seen like, it's kind of crazy how they're making like kind of it sounds gross, like meat but without
lab grown meat, right? Is that what you're gonna say?
Yeah, it kind of grosses me out, and I still wouldn't eat it. But still, like that's a less harsh way to do it if you're going to do it. But yeah, there's just like so much crazy science that's going to be happening in the next like 20 years. It's going to be crazy to watch.
No, I totally agree. Like it weirds me out a bit too. And I don't know that I would eat it, but I think it's incredible that that's where we've come. And that's how far we've, grown in regards to the science of meat. And I think that would be a huge, huge shift for the world for people who really don't want to give up that, the diet and the taste. And, I can't think of a better solve, I guess, if people are, if the whole world's not going to go vegan. That sounds great to me.
Right. No, for sure. And like, what do you have going on in the future, Rebecca? Just things you're working on, or just continuing to put out content and just travel and share everything that you're doing?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying doing YouTube. I didn't think I'd love the like editing side of it and the time that it requires, but I'm having a lot of fun creating content. It seems like people are really like showing a desire for more video, which I think is cool. So I'm definitely hoping to do and put a little more effort into video production and just sharing content. So hoping my audience will tell me what they want to see so I can keep producing. But I'm exploring other options too. I'm not sure. I know that like I feel really excited and really passionate about sort of like what I'm doing and what I'm sharing, and people are resonating with it, which is great. So I think we'll kind of see. It depends what people are asking for. Like I've talked, my fiance and I've talked about different like digital products. I just want to find how I can be of service to the most people, I guess. Like I really want to be able to provide value for those who are looking to take the plunge into a vegan lifestyle or to eat less meat, whatever that might be. I feel like I am 100% vegan, and I truly believe in that lifestyle. But I also think that vegans get a bit of a bad reputation, and a lot of people sort of are turned off by the title vegan because they assume that we're going to sort of like push them around and tell them what's what and make them feel guilty for their eating habits. And I honestly feel, I mean, obviously it would be wonderful if everybody was vegan, but I feel sort of like a calling to help people who are sort of in the middle, who just want to make an impact or make a shift, whether that's like a full dive into it or just a little bit. I think I like that I'm able to approach it without judgment, or I feel like I am pretty good at finding a middle ground and meeting people halfway. And I'd also love to be able to sort of like provide value and help people who just honestly are like daily meat eaters and are like, whoa, this plant-based thing is cool. Like, how could I incorporate this, I guess? Because I think that's huge too. And I think that does make a difference, you know? So we'll see. I don't really know what's to come, but definitely more content. Yeah. And I'm just excited about it. I love the community. Like we mentioned before, it's really cool to connect with people sort of like far and wide over Instagram, over different social medias, and share this like lifestyle and this passion and sort of help each other out. So that's what I want to do for everybody else.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an amazing community. And I mean, you're definitely on the right track. I mean, I love the work that you're putting out there. And I think helping people kind of in that transition state or kind of thinking about it or thinking plant-based, like I think that's an amazing space to be in. And I know you're going to do amazing work there. So no, just keep up doing what you're doing, because it really is going to impact a lot of lives for sure. And, you know, Rebecca, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media and on YouTube? That way they can keep up with all of your new content.
They can, Instagram's great. Rebecca Greentree. I also have a website, www.rebeccagreentree.com. And when you head to the website, you can sign up for my email list, which will notify you of any new blog post or YouTube video, or you can head to YouTube, Rebecca Greentree, and subscribe to my channel.
Perfect. Now I'll put all of those in the show notes so people can just go click and give you an ad. And Rebecca, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's been your biggest takeaway on your wellness journey so far, but if you just had one piece of advice to give, what would it be?
I think know that even though you're only one person, you have the power to create change and make an impact. I think that's
I love
what
that.
I'd say.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. And I love it. And just Rebecca, thank you so much for taking time to come on. I loved having you and just excited to follow along with all of your work. I love it. So just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Rebecca. She's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give her a follow on social media to keep up with everything that she's been working on. You can find her social media links that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's drkaseyjohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Rebecca's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Rebecca, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.